Well, first tonight, more than 90% of domestic abuse survivors who wanted their abuser to get help to change their ways have not been able to access the support needed.
And exclusive data we've obtained shows local authority funding for such schemes and other domestic abuse services is actually falling in parts of Yorkshire. Well, the stark figures come as Calendar has been allowed into one facility that does offer that support. The Inspire to Change programme in South Yorkshire has helped more than 200 men since 2021, but it's now one of a dwindling number of what are known as perpetrator intervention schemes. In this, the third and final part of our Unheard Voices series, Amelia Beckett examines what is being done to break the cycle.
Every week in this room, men sit and talk about how they've abused their partners. Some will have violently attacked them, others manipulated and controlled them. All say they have a desire to change.
I was controlling with money. I was domineering. It was my way or no way. Even kicking things. And whilst I never considered that to be physical abuse, in actual fact, it is, because it's kind of the intimation that if you don't do what I'm saying, you're going to be next.
Jack has been married to Sarah for 15 years. They're not their real names as we're protecting their identities. 3 years ago, their relationship hit crisis point when Sarah realised Jack was abusing her. To hear their personal reflections of that time, we interviewed them separately.
He used to sort of belittle me at times. Like swear words he would call me and say that I was useless at most things in the house. So it got to the point where I didn't want to do anything in the house because I was frightened if I didn't do it his way, because it had to be his way or he lost his temper. It wasn't until I went for counselling for something else, bereavement, that I opened up about certain things my husband did. And she said, I'm not saying you're in an abusive relationship, but... And then as soon as she said that, I thought, yes, I am.
So Sarah told Jack if he didn't seek help for his behaviour, she was going to leave. It was then he found the Inspire to Change programme led by the charity Cranston, a 6-month programme to help abusers unpick behaviour and break the cycle of abuse.
They're just so simple, some of the things that they teach and show you, but they're things I think many men would just miss in their normal everyday life.
Why do you think you didn't recognise that what you were doing was abusive?
There's no real reason why I didn't recognise it. I can't answer that. All I can say is society's got a certain image of a man, and this is handed down generation after generation, and we've got to look at how, as a society, generally, we teach young men.
That is central to perpetrator intervention schemes, and for those who run them, the belief they are essential in helping tackle domestic abuse.
If we're not looking at the person that's doing the behaviour, taking the accountability and responsibility for their behaviour, then how can things change?
A lot of the individuals that we get on the groups are not just partners, but they're also parents. So if they start to address and tackle their own and change their own behaviour, the hope is that their children then see that, and that then breaks that cycle of sort of inherited attitudes and beliefs that gets passed down generation after generation.
But funding for sessions like these can be a postcode lottery. Here in Rotherham, they're supported by both the local and combined authorities. But over in Huddersfield, a similar course has been suspended because all funding from Kirklees Council has been cut.
I sent Freedom of Information requests to all local authorities in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire to ask about their domestic abuse budgets. The results are hugely varied. In Calderdale, they increased their budget by 52% between 2022 and 2024, and in Lincolnshire, it went up by 37% in the same period. But at the other end of the scale, North Yorkshire's budget stayed exactly the same, and in Kirklees, they cut it by 24%.
Kirklees Council says its overall budget has not been reduced due to other sources of funding. But for Noreen and Erica, who work for the largest domestic abuse charity in Yorkshire, they say demand for their services has doubled in the last 5 years, but funding is on a knife edge.
We're in a position that some additional funding that's been given throughout the sector is due to end at the end of March 2025. The impact that will have is absolutely massive. We might be looking at reducing our staffing, which will impact the support we can provide, which will be detrimental to the safety of our survivors.
We're hoping we get an extension on that funding, but at this moment we are at those crossroads where we don't know what the future looks like in terms of funding.
But why is demand increasing so much? Criminologist Dr. Sam Lewis leads a team at the University of Leeds which researches violence against women and girls.
I think there is a great deal more awareness, which is fantastic, and the more we talk about it, the more people will be able to report their experiences. But often, I think, if we go back far enough, people didn't have ways of meeting other people with similar misogynistic attitudes. Now, online, you can meet people who share your perhaps very negative, very misogynistic interests or beliefs. And so I think the online environment has created a really dangerous space, and those kinds of environments leak out into broader society.
The government says it's set an unprecedented mission to halve violence against women and girls in a decade. And yet, while cuts to funding continue, schemes which people like Jack and Sarah say are so valuable continue to slip away. Amelia Beckett, ITV News, Rotherham.